Welcome, this is the news this week, bringing you a recap of major stories. My name is Riyai Emem, coming to you live from Uyo, the Akwa Ibom state capital. Let's take a look at the headlines. President Tinubu unveils major sports sector reform, orders funding reset from 2026. INEC to conduct mock accreditation ahead of FCT area council polls. In other news, Trump signs executive order threatening tariffs for countries trading with Iran. We'll bring you the details of these stories and more in a moment. Welcome and thanks for joining us, bringing you a recap of major events across the nation and the globe. We head to the nation's leader, President Bola Ahmed Tinubu, who set in motion of Nigeria's sports sector, directing key ministries and agencies of the federal government to reset sports funding and make the industry more economically viable. The president announced the plan in a message posted on his verified X handle, where he described sports as one of Nigeria's strongest national brands and a major tool for unity and global influence. Tinubu said the reforms were anchored on the Renewed Hope Initiative for Nigeria's sports economy, which he described as a strategy to position sports as a driver of job creation, tourism, investment, and global influence. He added that his administration would build a stronger sports ecosystem through scientific elite athlete development, active grassroots participation, revitalized sports federations, and hosting major international events in Nigeria. Meanwhile, President Bola Tinubu during the week called on the World Bank to support Nigeria's ongoing economic reforms with a focus on agriculture, youth employment and private sector growth as part of his administration's strategy to strengthen the economy and expand opportunities for Nigerians. The president made the remarks while receiving a delegation from the World Bank led by Anna Burge, Managing Director of Operations of the State House Abuja. The president highlighted the importance of mechanization and modernization of agriculture to increase productivity and create opportunities for Nigeria's large young population. Tinubu also pointed to the petrochemical sector and other domestic industries as areas where the government is working to improve outputs and strengthen local markets. He stressed that and stability. In the meantime, President Tinubu also in the course of the week directed the federal government, Federal Roads Maintenance Agency, to adopt a preventive, planned and evidence-based approach to road maintenance to improve the condition and lifespan of federal roads. Tinubu, represented by the Secretary to the Government of the Federation, Senator George Akume, gave the directive in Abuja at the 2026 Roads Summit with the theme Sustainable Road Infrastructure for National Growth. The President also tasked the agency to develop a comprehensive geo-referenced national database of failed and failing federal roads, evidence-based maintenance framework, stressing that long-term infrastructure resilience depended on accurate data and institutional coordination. Away from that, the federal government within the week flagged off a free nationwide training program targeting 10 million Nigerians on financial inclusion and financial literacy, following the signing of a memorandum of understanding with investment knowledge and digital competencies for sustainable wealth creation. Under the MOU, the federal government will collaborate with the Institute of Chartered Accountants of Nigeria, ICANN, the Chartered Institute of Bankers of Nigeria, CIBN, the Chartered Institute of Stockbrokers, the National Institute of Credit Administration, the Chartered Risk Management Institute, and the Nigeria Institute of Innovation and Entrepreneurship to join the design training programs, certification pathways, digital skills initiatives, and mentorship platforms. Speaking at the flag-off ceremony at the Presidential Villa Abuja, on behalf of the President Bola Ahmed Tinubu, the Vice President described the agreement as more than a formal document. He further noted that Nigeria will only reap from its demographic dividend if young people and women were deliberately equipped with relevant skills and strong ethical grounding to thrive in a rapidly evolving digital economy. In the meantime, the federal government during the week set up a new technical subcommittee under the National Economic Council to drive the development of Nigeria's livestock sector. This aims to boost economic growth, improve food security, and strengthen unity across the country. The Minister of Budget and Economic Planning, Senator Abubakar Atiku Bagudu, announced this during the first meeting of the subcommittee at the ministry's headquarters in Abuja. The minister said the team was created to harmonize existing policies and ideas and turn them into a clear and practical plan that the National Economic Council can approve and begin to carry out without delay. According to the minister, the committee comprises governors from the 6 geopolitical zones, key ministers, and the co-chair of the Presidential Committee on Livestock Development. Meanwhile, the Office of the Head of the Civil Service of the Federation in the course of the week announced the commencement of the accreditation exercise for the selection of 5 new federal permanent secretaries, adding to a statement released by the Director of Press at the OHCSF in Olotu. The exercise followed the approval of President Bola Tinubu. Olotu noted that the process is designed to fill existing and impending vacancies for candidates originating from Adamawa, Bayelsa, Enugu, Kano, and Ogun State. The head of the Civil Service of the Federation, Didi Walson-Jack, described the accreditation as the foundational step in a critical national assignment that will determine the future quality, integrity, and capacity of the federal civil service leadership. Walson-Jack charged the accreditation committee to execute its duties with utmost diligence, thoroughness, and strict adherence to established rules and procedures. She emphasized that the principles of fairness, transparency, and merit must be paramount throughout the exercise. Elsewhere, the Federal Accounts Allocation Committee, FAC, within the week said it shared a total of 1.969 trillion naira among the federal government, state, and local government councils from federation revenue that accrued in December 2025. This was disclosed in a communique issued by FAAC at the end of its monthly meeting. According to the communique, the total distributable revenue comprised 1.084 trillion naira in statutory revenue, 846.51 billion naira from value-added tax, and 38.11 billion naira from the electronic money transfer levy. FAC noted that a total gross revenue of 2.585 trillion naira was available in December 2025. From the amount, 104.69 billion naira was deducted as cost of collection, while 511.58 billion naira was set aside for transfers, refunds, and savings. The communique further stated that gross statutory revenue for December 2025 stood at 1.63 trillion naira, representing a decline of 105.21 billion naira compared to the 1.74 trillion naira recorded in November 2025. From the Red Chambers, the Senate during the week initiated moves to amend relevant provisions of the 1999 Constitution to enable an upward review of the current administration and revenue allocation formula in favor of the federal government. Under the existing formula, the federal government receives 52.68% of federally collected revenue, while 36 states get 26.72%, and the 774 local government councils share 20.60%. Despite this, the Senate said the federal government's share is no longer sufficient to meet its expanding national responsibilities. The proposed constitutional amendment is contained in a bill sponsored by Senator Sunday Karimi, which killed first reading at plenary. According to him, the current revenue sharing arrangement is outdated and unsustainable, placing excessive financial pressure on government amid rising infrastructure decay and worsening insecurity across the country. Now to the Green Chambers. The House of Representatives Public Accounts Committee in the course of the week resolved to address the long-standing backlog of federal audit reports, pledging to ensure the submission of the 2023 concern that persistent delays in the audit process have continued to weaken its constitutional oversight mandate, particularly its responsibility to scrutinize public expenditure and hold ministries, departments and agencies accountable. The chairman of the committee, Bamidele Salam, disclosed this at a retreat for PAC members, committee staff and key stakeholders held in Ghana. In a statement issued by the committee's media unit, Salam said the committee has resolved to convene a high-level stakeholders meeting immediately after the retreat, bringing together the Auditor General for the Federation, the Accountant General, the Financial Reporting Council, and other relevant institutions to agree on a clear timeline for clearing the outstanding audit reports. From the judiciary, Kogi Central Senator Natasha Akpoti-Uduaghan during the week filed a counter affidavit before the Supreme Court of Nigeria in opposition to an appeal instituted by the Senate President Godswill Akpabio arising from proceedings of the Court of Appeal. Court documents in Abuja indicate that the counter affidavit was deposed to by a senior legislative aide to Senator Akpoti-Uduaghan and filed in response to Senator Akpabio's motion on notice dated January 21, 2026. The respondents are urging the Apex Court to dismiss the application in its entirety, arguing that it discloses no prima facie good cause and constitutes an abuse of court process. According to the counter affidavit, the Court of Appeal had already concluded hearing in the substantive appeal on November 28, 2025 and reserved the matter for judgment. In a separate development, the Minister of Information and National Orientation, Mohammed Idris, within the week urged Nigerian youth to use the ongoing national reforms to upscale their skills. The minister described them as critical pathways for personal growth and national building. Idris said this while delivering this year's convocation lecture titled Youth and Nation Building, Navigating Opportunities in an Era of National Reforms at the 34th convocation ceremony of the Federal University of Technology, FUT Mina, Niger State. The minister noted that the country's future depends mainly on how its young population is educated, skilled and engaged. He explained that the reforms introduced under President Bola Tinubu's administration were deliberate and necessary to arrest Nigeria's economic and governance systems. On electoral matters, the Independent National Electoral Commission, INEC, yesterday announced plans to conduct a mock accreditation and results upload exercise ahead of the February 21, 2026 Federal Capital Territory Area Council elections. In a statement signed by INEC's Resident Electoral Commissioner for the FCT, the electoral umpire said the mock exercise will take place today in 289 selected polling units between 8:30 a.m. and 2:30 p.m. According to the Commission, the exercise is aimed at ensuring a hitch-free area council election by testing accreditation procedures and the results upload process. INEC encouraged voters in the affected polling units to turn out with their permanent voter cards and participate in the mock exercise, noting that their participation would help fine-tune preparations for the main election. The commissioner added that the list of designated polling units for the mock exercise is available on its official website. In education, the Joint Admissions and Matriculation Board in the course of the week announced that persons with disabilities will receive free application documents for the 2026-2027 examination. The announcement contained in JAMB's weekly bulletin notes that the free application documents would be processed through the JAMB Equal Opportunity Group for eligible candidates with disabilities who intend to sit the examination. JAMB Registrar Professor Aisha Koloyede disclosed this during a meeting with critical stakeholders at the board's national headquarters in Abuja, restating the board's commitment to the welfare of persons with disabilities through its free application document initiative. According to Koloyede, beneficiaries of the scheme include but are not limited to persons living with Down syndrome, autism, dyslexia, and attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, ADHD. He added that the initiative underscores the board's resolve to remove barriers to access and ensure that candidates with disabilities are given equal opportunities to pursue their academic aspirations. Still to come in the news. Federal government moves to share electricity subsidy costs with states. Stay tuned for details of this and more in a moment. Welcome back and thanks for joining us. It's still the news this week on Spectrum Television. We head down to Africa, where Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdogan within the week met Egyptian counterpart Abdel Fattah al-Sisi in Cairo, sealing a raft of new partnership deals and signaling a united front on regional crises in Iran, Sudan and Gaza. Reports say relations between Cairo and Ankara have thawed after nearly a decade of estrangement that followed Sisi's removal of President Mohamed Morsi in 2013. Egypt and Turkey now form half of the mediating bloc for the current Gaza truce, backing the Sudanese army in its war with paramilitary forces and share increasingly convergent positions across the region. Sisi said they agreed on the need to implement all phases of the U.S. brokered peace truce agreement, rejecting any attempts to circumvent or obstruct the implementation of President Trump's peace plan. Elsewhere, Congolese President Felix Tshisekedi during the week reaffirmed his commitment to inclusive and peaceful dialogue between all people in the Democratic Republic of Congo. In an address to the diplomatic corps in Kinshasa, he said national unity was more than a fundamental requirement. His comments come as fighting continues in the east of the country between the army and Rwandan-backed M23 rebels, called for by parts of the opposition. The idea of an inter-Congolese national dialogue has also been promoted by Angolan President João Lourenço in recent weeks. Tshisekedi, however, has set out conditions for it to take place, including that the process must stay placed on home soil and under institutional control. Still in Africa, Mozambique, in the course of the week, grappled with its worst flooding in decades, just months after recovering from a devastating drought. Nearly 700,000 people were reportedly affected, with over 100,000 forced into temporary shelters and homes. Fine land and roads were submerged. The United Nations warns that severe overcrowding is creating dangerous conditions, particularly for women, girls, the elderly, and those with disabilities. The United Nations agency stressed that the risks are far from over, saying that with continued rainfall forecast, more displacement is expected and urgent international support is critical. Meanwhile, the World Food Programme said it is scaling up to reach 450,000 people with life-saving food and nutrition, seeking assistance also from the rest of the international community at about $32 million. On the foreign scene, United States President Donald Trump, in an executive order signed yesterday, said that he could impose additional tariffs on countries that continue to trade with Iran. The order does not specify the rates that could be imposed, but uses 25% as an example. According to the order, the tariffs will apply only to goods imported into the U.S. from any nation that directly or indirectly purchases, imports, or otherwise acquires any goods or services from Iran. This comes amid ongoing talks between senior U.S. and Iranian officials in Oman following several weeks of threats from both sides. Meanwhile, President Donald Trump within the week called on Republicans to nationalize the voting as his administration pushes to overhaul election ground rules ahead of the pivotal midterm races later this year. Trump made the call to the former Deputy Director of the FBI, Dan Bongino, in a podcast appearance. The president's comments come less than a week after the FBI searched an elections office in Fulton County, Georgia, which has long been a centerpiece of Trump's claims that his 2020 loss to Joe Biden was fraudulent. Reports say the search was related to a Justice Department's efforts to seize election records and search for alleged voter fraud in the county. In the meantime, US President Donald Trump also during the week announced that he agreed to a trade deal with India's Prime Minister Narendra Modi, where the US will lower tariffs on goods from India to 18% from 25%. In a post on social media, Trump stated that India will reduce trade barriers to zero, will also stop buying Russian oil, and an additional 25% tariff penalty imposed for Delhi's refusal to stop buying oil from Russia will be dropped. The announcement comes less than a week after India and the European Union announced a landmark trade deal that capped nearly 2 decades of on and off talks. Still on the foreign scene, U.S. Judge Anna Reyes in the course of the week temporarily blocked the Trump administration's attempt to end deportation protection for more than 350,000 Haitian immigrants who were allowed to live and work in the U.S. legally under Temporary Protected Status (TPS). Judge Reyes said the Department of Homeland Security boss Kristi Noem does not have the facts or law on her side. The administration argued that TPS schemes attract illegal immigration and have long been abused and extended by Democrats. On a business news, the federal government within the week moved to end the practice of carrying electricity subsidy cost alone, announcing a framework that will spread the burden across federal, state and local governments from 2026. The Director General of the Budget Office of the Federation, Tinubu, disclosed this in Abuja during a training and sensitization on workshop for ministries, departments and agencies on the 2026 post-process budget preparation process using the government's integrated financial management information system, budget preparation subsystem. Yakubu said President Bola Tinubu had directed that electricity subsidy costs be made explicit, tracked and fairly shared across the tiers of government, warning that the current approach creates hidden liabilities and recurring crises in the power market. He added that from 2026 the federal government would no longer treat electricity subsidies as an open-ended obligation borne solely by the center, especially where policy decisions and political benefits are shared. Meanwhile, the federal government during the week reaffirmed that engineering-driven solutions are critical to achieving Nigeria's food security, stressing that mechanization, irrigation systems, storage infrastructure, and agro-processing technologies are essential to boosting productivity and reducing post-harvest losses across the country. It also emphasized the role of engineering in driving industrial growth, noting that a strong mechanical and manufacturing base is fundamental to value addition, job creation, and the competitiveness of Nigeria's industrial sector in both regional and global markets. Reports say the position was restated by the Minister of Agriculture and Food Security, Abubakar Kyari, at the inauguration of the 17th National Chairman of the Nigerian Institution of Mechanical Engineers and Executive Committee members in Abuja. Still in business. Still in business, petroleum product marketers in the course of the week argued that the only way to shield Nigerians from the shock of a sudden surge in petrol prices is for the federal government to sell crude oil to the Dangote Petroleum Refinery and other local refineries at subsidized rates. The marketers therefore urged the federal government to sell crude oil to domestic refineries with a subsidy to prevent a sharp increase in petrol prices. Specifically, the Independent Petroleum Marketers Association of Nigeria appealed to President Bola Tinubu to consider subsidizing crude prices while also extending the Naira for crude deal to other modular refineries operating in the country. Recall that the Dangote refinery recently effected a price hike, pushing the pump price of petrol to 839 naira per litre at MRS and other filling stations. Still to come in the news, Falconets target crucial first leg advantage over Senegal in under-20 WWCQ. Stay tuned for details of this and more in a moment. Welcome back and thanks for staying tuned. And now to conclude the news this week. In health, the federal government within the week raised concerns over the growing burden of respiratory illnesses, cardiovascular conditions and other environment-related diseases linked to greenhouse gas emissions across Nigeria. The Minister of Environment, Balarabe Lawal, issued the warning in Abuja during a stakeholders' engagement on the national emergency response to environment-related diseases arising from greenhouse gas emissions. Lawal, who was represented by the Permanent Secretary of the Ministry, Mahmood Kambari, said evidence from environmental surveillance, health statistics and peer assessments shows a troubling rise in diseases associated with greenhouse gas emissions. According to him, respiratory illnesses, cardiovascular conditions and other environmentally related diseases are increasing at an alarming rate. Elsewhere, the Joint Health Sector Unions JOHESU yesterday suspended its nationwide strike 84 days after the industrial action began. This was announced in a communique issued by the union after its expanded National Executive Council emergency meeting held in Abuja. According to the communique, the meeting was convened to review the outcomes of a conciliation meeting between the federal government and JOHESU held on Thursday at the headquarters of the Federal Ministry of Labour and Employment. JOHESU expressed gratitude to the individuals and institutions that played a role in resolving the crisis. Still in health, the medical director of the Snake Bites Treatment and Research Hospital, Gombe State, Dr. Nicholas Amani Haman, in the course of the week warned snake bite victims against tying the affected limb with pieces of cloth to stop the movement of snake venom, describing the practice as dangerous and outdated. He also cautioned against the use of razor blades or sharp objects to extract supposed poison, noting that such actions are injurious and could reduce the victim's chances of survival. Amani Haman gave the warning during an interview with newsmen while reacting to the death of Nigerian singer Ifunanya Nwagene, who reportedly died after a snake bite in Abuja. According to him, first aid response is critical in snake bite cases. Now to the world of sports, Nigeria's Falconets will look to record a big win when they take on Senegal in the first leg of the 2026 FIFA Under-20 Women's World Cup third qualifying round contest today. Tonight's encounter is slated for the Moshood Abiola Sports Arena, Abeokuta, and will kick off at 4 p.m. The Falconets have built a reputation as one of Africa's most consistent forces at youth level. Moses Aduku's side will, however, be facing the biggest test in the qualifiers against the free-scoring Senegalese. Recall that Nigeria defeated Rwanda 4-0 on aggregate in the previous round. Still in sports, the Saudi Pro League has picked Manchester United's midfielder Bruno Fernandes and Liverpool's forward Mohamed Salah as potential ambassadors for the league as replacement for Cristiano Ronaldo. Ronaldo, who is now 41 years old, has been the most famous player in the Saudi league after he came to the kingdom in 2022 on a free transfer after spending over 20 years playing in Europe with 4 different teams. In 2025, Ronaldo signed a big and profitable new contract with Al Nassr until the next summer. Reports say because of his comment about the club owners PIV not supporting the team enough during the recent transfer window compared to other clubs, Ronaldo might leave this summer. The 5-time Ballon d'Or winner has a £43 million clause in his new contract that will become active at the end of the season. Emma Raducanu dug deep to secure a gritty win over Alexandra Olynykova and reach her first final since her 2021 US Open triumph. Aged 18, Raducanu stunned the sporting world when she became the first qualifier to win a Grand Slam with victory in New York. The British number 1 yesterday claimed a 7-5, 3-6, 6-3 win after almost 3 hours on court against Ukraine's Olynykova to reach the final of the Transylvania Open. Fellow Briton Katie Boulter also made a breakthrough at the Ostrava Open, beating American Katie Vonnet to make her first final in over 15 months. This means Raducanu and Boulter will become the first 2 British women tour level finals on the same day. On entertainment news, breakout talent Trey has officially returned with his new single Catapult featuring Dixie. The single marks his first release of the year and the beginning of a new creative chapter. The song explores a moment where affection becomes entangled with material expectations, and instead of confrontations, Trey responds with optimism, curiosity and charm. It is a love song at heart, but one that chooses warmth and joy over heaviness. To conclude the news within the week, Afrobeat singer and songwriter Adekunle Gold has opined that getting older is not a setback but an advantage. The singer made the remarks while reflecting on his 39th birthday celebration. Gold revealed that while birthdays once filled him with pressure, it now brings a sense of calm and gratitude. And that's all we have for you at this time, bringing you a recap of major stories that happened over the week. Do also subscribe to our YouTube channel, all of which you can find on our website, spectrumtvlive.ng. This has been the news within the week. Thanks for watching. Uyai and Ma'am. Enjoy the rest of your weekend.